Hey agent, how's it going? Yeah, let me get this thing going here. I have a weird, that is super weird. Um, Hold on. Something really weird just happened with my OBS. So, what the heck? All right. Anyways, whatever. We won't worry about that right now. You guys should hear me. Everything should be good. Okay. This is what I'm doing. Don't worry about what's on the screen there. I am going to be working on, I am going to talk a little bit about networking, but only because somebody asked me a question in the Discord. So let's go look at that real quick. This is not the actual stuff that I want to show, though, or the thing that I want to look at. Why are these all untitled? They should be... I don't know why all of our scenes are untitled. It's like they all wiped. So I might have to go and find... Yeah, so this is the one I want. So I had a question in the Discord. I'll show you guys what the question says. Over here, networking. And it should block, for the most part, whoever it is, but that's not that big of a deal. So what somebody asked was, like, how should we do this, right? If we were going to be trying to use Proxmox to block off Werewolf to be in a different VLAN, and then to be able to share out for like your compute VMs or whatever images you wanted to boot in there. And if you guys don't know, that's how I run it in my home lab, right? So if we come over here and we go to the home lab here, all of my nodes here are based off of this Werewolf system. This is the head node, and all the nodes run underneath it, right? Some of you have been around for that. Those of you that haven't been here for that, just suffice it to say that's how my home lab works. But the question here was, how are they going to run? You know, you got home router doing whatever it's doing, some kind of non-routable internal address, and then how are you going to run these different VMs here on some... Looks like they're doing like a cluster bridge, some type of other VMBR networking or something like that. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just show the way that I do it in the home lab, because that's kind of the thing that was being asked. Also, let me pop up chat here so we can see what's going on. I'll drop the chat here so you guys can talk and that kind of stuff. Also, that's blocked out, whatever that is. But yeah, I'm glad you guys are hanging out. Yeah, so that was you that was asking about it. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is the way that I'm doing it in Proxmox. And hopefully this is clear as mud when I'm done showing you kind of what we do. So there's two VLANs in my environment. There's the untagged default VLAN, and then there's VLAN 1, right? Those are the two, ostensibly the two VLANs that are happening. I said ostensibly. Whatever, this thing doesn't know. Yeah, there we go. So let me show you guys how it works. So if we were to go to my drawing here, this is roughly how my home lab works. So we've got a Proxmox server. So here's my physical hosts. These are the physical hosts that are still on. I've turned off the other two. Maybe even the other three, was it? I don't know. They're all off now. So that's something to think about. And then, let me fix I gotta fix this stuff down here. My environment kind of looks weird. Okay, so anyways, here's my physical environment, and here's my Proxmox server. He's sitting on 218, and he's sitting between the primary network and the lab network, right? So he's running VLAN tagged interfaces on his internal virtual switch for VLAN 1. This is an untagged network, so it's default VLAN. Probably VLAN 0 if we cared, but they're in unmanaged situations. You just don't have the 802.1q tag in there, so then it's all just Ethernet traffic, right? The reason this is important is because all of the devices over here that are tagged for VLAN 1, the virtual switch will not let traffic exit on that interface into those network ranges unless there's something that's actually allowed it to go through there. In this case, it has to have that VLAN 1 tag, right? So to do that, right, to have that work, or to have that work between those two networks, you have to have a router involved, right? So my VLAN, the bridge between my VLANs is a system called the Linux router that sits there in the network, and he's got an interface 192.168.11.160 here, and he's got a second interface 192.168.11 200.1 over here. So he functions as the router. If I were to go to any devices in my network, any devices over in that network right now, right? If we were to go over to the Werewolf server, hopefully I'm still logged in over here. Yeah, and here's one of the Rocky Box. If I do IPR, his default gateway is the 192.168.200.1 interface, which is this internal interface of the Linux router. So then the next question would be, okay, well, Scott, I see that I have to do that. What would the configuration look like for that to work inside of Proxmox, right? Like if I wanted to build this out, what do I have to do in Proxmox to get there? Well, what you have to do is this. It's pretty straightforward, but let me show you. If I go down to my Proxmox server, you have to have that Linux router sitting there, and he has to be plumbed up with those two interfaces. So he's got to have an interface that has, this is the 192.168.11 network. Yeah, 192.168, yep. And this is the 192.168.200 network right here with the tag 1 on it. So there's two interfaces. One is sitting over in the 11 network, one is in the 200 network. That's what's going on. Internal to that device, inside the Linux box, we had to do a couple of configurations. And those configurations, kind of hard to see here, but I took some notes on them. And by the way, I think these notes are in the... let me show you where the notes are in case, because I know you're probably going to want to copy these if you're going to use this, Cairo. In our Discord, they're under meeting notes, I'm pretty sure. And then you go up just a little bit, and this is when I was working through rebuilding the lab, redeploying the lab. Yeah, so here's what I did. Here's so it's on 5/24/2026 if you want it. But here's what I did to set that up. There's one other thing, actually. Hold on, I got to add this. I need to go fix my notes real quick. There's one other thing that I did. Where is that? Hold on. Lab rebuild. And... I have them over here. Oh, sorry. I got notes in like 30 places. This is... where did I have this? It's my whole lab stuff. Where did I... I definitely just had this in here. Maybe it's over in my generic list. Here it is. Okay. So let me write these out real quick. I meant to do this the other day. I meant to capture this, but it was nm CLI con modify ETH1. Yeah, I know. I couldn't grab it out because it's a console, so I apologize. It's not super clean. IPv4 dot method manual IPv4 dot address 192.168.200.1/24. So that's the internal. That's that VLAN 1. He gets IPv4 dot gateway 192.168.200.1. And then I'm going to just copy this because that's way easier than retyping it. And then we're going to go ETH2, right? And ETH2 was going to be 11.160. And then /24, and then his gateway is 11.1, which is the internal interface of my home router. Now, to make this work for my home boxes, because my home boxes have to be able to set there as well, you would say, well, hold on, Scott. So now you've got these two networks, right? And they're VLAN'd off, I get that. And the router knows that there's these two things. But how do the devices in between there know to send traffic? Because they've got a default gateway. All my home devices, like my machine here, 192.168.11.47 typically, right? I think that's what I normally am. Let's go pop it up, right? We don't normally tell people we can do Windows, but but sometimes we have to. Yeah, he's a .47, right? That's his normal address. How does he know to get over to that .200 network? Well, he doesn't, right? But I can have that set inside of my router internally. So 192.168.11.1. Hold on, let me log in here real quick. To get in my, maybe. Hopefully I know how to get in my home router. Huh. Maybe I'm gonna lock myself out of my home router. Man, I don't even know what they're showing me there. For my, they're giving me this captcha that I can't even read. Hold on. Man, that was way harder than it should have been. Okay, then on my router, within my LAN, so right, like this is a SUS type router thing that we've got here. On my internal LAN, I have routes assigned, and I have a static route internal to my device that says, okay, if anybody wants to get to 192.168.200.anything, right? So that's how you match anything in this type of network. You're going to use the gateway 192.168.11.160. So that's the internal, or let's say that's the untagged VLAN of the Linux router. And then the Linux router knows to send the traffic to the other side by that config right here. So let me fix this real quick in the thing in case you're going to go copy it. Where's my Discord? Right here. So let me just edit this. So if you wanted to copy this, this would be the correct, whoops, this would be the correct values here. Yeah. So anyways, that's correct now. Oops. There you go. So I updated that. So, hey Zorgal, how's it going? We had a little question here about how we would go about doing the networking for a system, and I was just showing how I did it, right? Are there other ways to do this? I imagine it looks like you were doing it somewhat within your, maybe your interfaces. Let's get this out of the way. We don't need this right now. You were doing it inside like the bridging and something within Proxmox that is probably a lower level than I wanted to get into. What I just decided to do was split the traffic. VLAN 1 tagged. Any untagged VLAN is my normal traffic, and that. Yeah. So I had to set a static route so that these internal devices, would everything else work inside of there without it? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All the internal tagged traffic would stay tagged. It's only because I wanted to be able to get in there. I wouldn't be able to get into this box or the Werewolf server from my 192.168.11 network unless I had that. I would have to go jump into that network somehow or get to some device. So yeah, so all I did as a real quick recap is I formed this right here, which was, you know, you got this physical box, and then really, as if you think about it logically, right, physically the topology looks like this, right? There's a Proxmox server, and inside of it is all of the VLAN tag traffic one, but logically, yeah, everything's over there. However, just so you know, there used to be other devices, these other XCPNG boxes. They still exist in my network, but these hosts used to be out on them, and that works just fine. Werewolf can be internal to this server, and those can be over there as long as the frame is tagged with 802.11q or 802.1q rather. That traffic will go up, and it will be allowed to leave those virtual switches into those interfaces. So, yeah, that's kind of how that works. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of is clear as mud for you. Oh my, yeah, but my ASUS is on the 192.168.11, which is my normal network. The lab network is the network that's abstracted off via the VLAN tag. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But yeah, this is kind of my drawing of how that looks. As far as the Linux router is really the linchpin. If I turned them off, no traffic would flow. Once I turn them back on, then the tags are allowed to switch between the two. And really the configuration, the crux of that configuration is right here, where you got to turn on the IPv forwarding, right? So it'll allow it to send in between there. And then we had to just do a little bit of stuff where we fixed the names. There were some naming issues. They wanted to use some BS names that we weren't interested in, so we wanted to set the interfaces to the Ethernet ones. And I think technically this goes after, so I think this is actually the last step. So I'm gonna have to. And then we turned off the firewall because I was gonna forward it all through the firewall, but it just ended up not working the way I wanted. So I just turned the firewall off for it. I never went back and troubleshot that because once the stuff works in my lab, I just go on to other things and do other stuff. So that's kind of my way of doing things. So yeah, this is probably the most correct way to look at that. But yeah, this is the whole traffic through our system, the way that everything happens inside of the Prolog lab environment, right? How you guys connect to it, all that kind of stuff. And I think, yeah, all the people just use Prolog at, and then you guys get access through the Discord if you need it. All right, so what was I doing today? I was going to work on, well, I wanted to show that, so that's good. That was 20 minutes or so to kind of walk through how that process looks. Then the other thing I was going to do was I was going to keep adding to, I've got a presentation that's coming up. Some of you guys are part of the Discord, and if you are, we've got a presentation on breaking into tech, right? So I'm doing this presentation for people that want to get into tech. It's like it's going to be like a 4-hour workshop. I'm also going to record it for YouTube so people can go watch it later or whatever. But it's going to be, I tell people all the time, you can do this work, right? Like you can get into this field, and then people push back and say, no, we can't. And I say, well, then you're right? Like, I mean, you're right, you can't. If you don't think you can, I guarantee you, you're not going to. But often, as one of my friends, Ben, likes to say, everything you want is on the other side of a little hard work, right? So this talk is going to be like a workshop, and there's going to be a whole bunch of places where we're going to stop and you guys are going to do some activities and stuff. And the idea is getting into tech, right? So the purpose is, you're going to do a little bit of self-assessment on yourself, see where you stand, see what you want to do, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense for me to tell you, hey, the job I want you to go do is all this Linux stuff, and then you just tell me, hey, I hate command line, I don't want to do it. And I'd be like, well, let's find something else for you then. Or you need to find something else for yourself is a better way to put it, maybe. So, that's a self-assessment. What do you want to do? And then learning Linux, or I also concede any other, if you say, hey, it's security engineering, if it's this or this or this, fine. I still think Linux is a great vehicle for that, but that's really going to be up to you, right, you guys? And then what the day-to-day in the tech field looks like, regardless of what you're doing. What does it look like to be on an operational team? What does it look to be like on an engineering team? Different types of testing we do, different ways that we interact with management and the different types of managers. Oh, I need to add that. Different types of managers you're going to have, like breathing down your neck and what they're going to want to know from you, that kind of stuff. Then it's going to be putting together a resume, which, there's a million different theories on that. I tend to fall into the category of build a one-page resume and make it as good as possible and as catered towards the individual thing. Then we're going to have some practice interview skills. So we're going to work through that stuff. And then we're going to talk about how you apply for jobs, right? As we go through this stuff, there's going to be the things that you're going to do at the beginning, which is like a little AI activity. This is the same type of stuff we're doing with college students right now, where you're going and kind of using it like a little study buddy, and then we discuss it. Then we get down to the end, and at the end, there's the actual deliverables, the things that when we're done with this and you're moving forward that that you should do, right? Then like learning Linux, right? Here's the topics for learning Linux, a bunch of stuff. And then what I think your deliverables are at the end of this. And again, if you're telling me, hey, I want to go into security, you need like a security plus or CISSP or whatever you want to go get, you understand how you're going to get ready for that based on, how you're going to study and that kind of stuff. Then we start getting to working in tech, like what does the job look like? What are the things that we're going to do? Talk about where we get into the field, all that kind of stuff. And I've been making more and more unhinged. I have Adobe Creative Cloud, so I've been making more and more unhinged slides as I go through this, right? What's going on, where the work comes from, types of meetings, just all kinds of stuff like that. So this is the types. types of testing that you're going to find, and then different terms and stuff. So I have a whole bunch of stuff to add to this presentation, which I could do right now. I could start working on this. Or I could just mess around because I got all kinds of making a resume. Practice your interview skills. So, oh yeah. What do they want to know? Applying for jobs. How are we going to apply for jobs? That kind of stuff. So I've been adding to this as I kind of go. I'm up to 55 slides already. It's going to be 4 hours. So not all of it's going to be me talking. A fair amount of it's going to be either the people who come to attend talking or whatever. If anybody's wondering what that is, that's in Discord, and it is free. So you hop in Discord, you go to our events, and it's right here. It's a free breaking into tech. And if you need an invite, if you say, hey, I need an invite, here's the actual invite right there. But there's Discord. That'll get you in. Is the PowerPoint available? I will make it available, Alpha Victor Charlie, when I'm done. I still probably have a few more hours worth of work at least on it for sure. To get it, I've got things to pull in now. I've got things to keep adding to it. For example, put this thing over here so it's out of the way a little bit. For example, in some of these areas, I have another presentation that I call my soft engineering skills. And this is the way you present yourself in the data is kind of like this. Let me see if I can grab, I want to see if I can grab all of these. Might just make some more of these. Oh. And some of you might wonder why my phone's not on silent like normal, and it's because I'm the on-call this week, so I actually need to... This is one of my favorite topics. Favorite things to show engineers, right? Like my junior engineers, when I'm having to explain to them how you don't present information to your users. But if you look at these two outputs, right? They're the same exact output. These two things here. But which one do you think would be better to send to an admin, right? Like if I was just showing this to you and you were like, hey, Scott, I'm going to send this email. And I say, wait, before you send that email to me or to our customers, could you check this thing? Do you think which of those do you think looks better? I think that's clear. This crap. About this one, I show this one sometimes. This one comes from an actual assignment I had turned into me many years ago from a college student. And fun fact here, every single number on this piece of paper is correct. Every single, if you were to take a network and you were to subnet it by dividing by using one bit, right? If you went from /24 to /25, that's perfectly correct. But that's what he turned into me. And well, I mean, what do you guys think about that? Would you want to be given that? If you ask somebody for some clarification on something and they sent you that back? I tell my students sometimes, I'm like, actually, I probably told this because I tell all my students this. If they do stuff like this, I say, hey, why don't you just go like this? Why don't you just take a picture of you flipping them off and send that to them instead? That's what I tell my junior engineers too. Like look at that. I'd rather you just go tell them, F you, I'm not going to give you the information, than send them that. Right? Like that's how it was actually formatted on the slide he sent me. It's amazing. That's a screenshot of like, I don't know if that's not amusing to you. I mean, I can't help you, but okay. So hold on. Let's go change this because I don't like the way this one looks. Let's do the layout. Let's change the layout to. I had another one on this that I kind of wanted to add. So I have one to add to this, which is about how, well, change that layout back. Nope. Actually, it doesn't matter. Get out of here. All of you get out of here. Control V. This is something I often say, right? We deal in precision and truth, like the kind of want to do, yeah, that should be bolded. Make that a little bigger. Yeah, so what happens a lot of times, like we're you know, when we do engineering, we're either building things or troubleshooting things. Those are the main two things that we kind of ended up doing. And oh, some weather we're having. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny you say that because I work directly for NOAA. I'm a government contractor under a contractor under a it's a long story, but I work directly for them. And yeah, we go into these extreme critical events or critical weather days, and then we can't touch the system. Those actually those are actually, let me see if I can. Those are actually there for you guys to see. Those are published. This is just an open web page, the weather status for the day, and you can see if there's critical weather days or not. But let's see. I think we have, yeah, there's an extreme caution right now, or enhanced caution. There, ECEs and CWDs are the names of them. But yeah, so we're in a status caution because, and they show you why. There were severe weather. We had some rain last night in Phoenix. Actually, we're down here about just under the middle half of Arizona is where Phoenix is. But these are all the pieces of weather. We also have heat advisories. This got added earlier this year, I think, the heat advisory part. And then there's tropical cyclones that were about to hit Guam. But anyways, if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff, that's there for you to play with. I always tell you guys, and this is always up in the Discord and the data science channels, where there's all kinds of stuff for you guys to go play with NOAA and other weather services that are free for you guys to use and mess with, and there's all kinds of data out there. Okay, so anyways, the way you present yourself in data. The reason this is important is, and I'll be talking about this in the presentation, but the reason this is so important is you find that if you're an engineer that doesn't give good information to people will very quickly stop coming to you, because Linux, and us Linux engineers, we always get pulled into everything because we're known for our troubleshooting. That's one of the things that we're kind of good at if we even got into this field, right? So I tell engineers often that, like, your currency, the thing that you deal with that people check, want to interact with you for, is how accurate you are. And if you're always giving bad information or your information that you're giving is not reliable, people are going to very quickly stop coming to you. And that's a kind of important thing to understand. I'm going to also do this one. I'm pulling this from another presentation that I've given before, in case anybody's wondering where I'm getting this from. This is all previous other presentations that I have, but you'll find very quickly here, I'll pull one over for you. When you look at it, you go, well, that's very bright. Most people like dark mode, so that's why I'm switching it over to like this dark mode format. So in case anybody's wondering where I'm getting this data. And this presentation, the one that I'm getting it from, I'm pretty sure is up in the Discord. It's called Soft Engineering Skills. And it's been around a long time. I've been talking about this for a long time with my engineers. If you guys don't know me or you haven't been around, I've been a Linux engineer for a long time, and I've been a tech lead on engineering teams since about 2013 was the first time I was a lead role, but I've been a 100% lead role since 2016, so about 10 years, where I'm just kind of like the guy that everybody's always asking questions to, and I'm like, okay, I'll give you the answers. Okay, so we got that. Let's talk then. The next thing that I'm just gonna work on, and if you guys want to stop me or ask me anything, let me know. Types of testing. That's funny. Let's make a new slide here, and this slide's gonna be, man, this is gonna be a ridiculously long talk that we have. Maybe I want to do this like a section header. Yeah. Go back to the other one. That's fine. This one's gonna be documentation, right? So documentation, how does that look, right? What does it look like to document stuff, right? There is a thing. Is that thing spelled wrong? Hierarchy. Yeah, it is. Hold on, I got another document I got to go open real quick. One of my other talks. This comes from this information I'm pulling is directly from a college class that I'm actually still teaching it right now. And I think it was in Unit 6. Hold on. There it is. Okay. Nope, not in here. All right, well, where do I have that? It's back here. Here. Okay. So let's go. Right, policy hierarchy. So if we're talking about policies, we tend to look at them in this way. And they get more and more down towards like rubber meets the road stuff the further down you go, right? And yeah. So I'll walk through all of these. Also, kind of pet peeve of mine. There we go. If there's going to be a period on a slide, it's got to be the same all the way through. But I kind of want to all right, so types of documentation we're going to run into. There's a policy hierarchy. I'm just going to show some types of documentation that they're going to run into, which will be here. Let me go grab this. The first one that I like to show is called the POAM. You guys familiar with a POAM? Anybody here know what a POAM is? P-O-A-M? Not poem, a POAM. POAMs are your plan of actions and milestones, and they tend to look like this, where we want to solve some problem, right? Or we found a deficiency in a system. Maybe it doesn't meet the functional requirements or other things, but a POAM is used to put together the steps and a timeline to solve a issue, right? So we find some gap between maybe we're trying to find some we're trying to become HIPAA compliant or something like that. That's actually what I'm showing in my example here. And here's the HIPAA general, whatever projects we're on, and then here's the tasks. And then who's going to be, so there's actually the next concept. So this is plan of action and milestones. Who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. That makes up what we call the RACI chart. And RACI charts look like this. So I am going to, actually, I probably should put those first, just because we're going to be using those next. So, bam, get rid of this crap. Yeah, this is how I'm choosing to spend my time with you guys. If you guys have questions, though, let me know, because otherwise I'm just kind of up here working on stuff. But this is what happens in a RACI chart. We've got who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and then who's informed on a project. Oops, better make that bigger too. Yep. So this is, who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. And a RACI chart tends to look something like this. So, well, we'll have to see if my coloring holds up. But some of you guys know I'm colorblind, so I don't really put much stock in colors. Oh, that's going to go from that to that. That's fine. But this may be, you've got some project or something, and this may be something that needs to happen. And this is, so in this case, like we've got some, we're trying to be risk averse, so we're trying to have some policy and then technical implementation, a compliance audit, and a final project report around some securing of our system, right? And that's something that may be there. Do I have then, so I don't have anything else there that I want to pull out, so I'll move that doc out of the way. All right, so that's kind of that part of it. So documentations, what you're going to run into, in the field, types of testing. I think that's funny. General terms, you should know for, I guess if it's going to be like that. There's a bunch of terms that I kind of want to add in and things that I think would be useful for people to know. Let me think. What are the takeaways from this section then? If I've walked through all those topics, there's a lot of topics. We're not going through them right now, but if I went through all those topics, trying to think of a good way to put you should work on your documentation skills, you suck at writing, but that's not the way that's the way I want to say it. I also the point will be made as I'm doing the presentation that you as engineers and how you kind of present yourself to a group of people, like in meetings, and even how you present yourself in emails. That's the only interaction, especially nowadays. I do have an etiquette section in that other doc where it's like the way that like you interact with people is that's all they get of you, right? So if you're kind of terse or if you're short with people, you got to remember they don't like understand over text, or they don't understand over Slack or Teams what you're saying to them. So I try to tell people you do have to kind of work on that candor, One, I always try to, my first consideration is always correctness. I want to be correct in anything I tell somebody. That's like the engineer in me. The second thing is like I want to be, I want to kind of, understand what they're asking for and give them the most important, like concise information. Because I can give people a lot of information from a terminal, but what do they actually need to know? That kind of stuff. Yeah, Cairo, that's fine. Yeah. I have a whole presentation on Werewolf, Cairo. I don't know if you know that. but it's over on YouTube. I actually presented it to the Werewolf user group I don't know, almost a year ago now, maybe. I don't remember exactly when it was, but we also sometimes have the Werewolf user group in the Discord. I sometimes post that for you guys when it's coming up. It just happened. It's the second Wednesday of the month, each month. But if you haven't seen it, hold on. Hold on. I'll just pull this up real quick. If your questions fall into any of these, Cairo, I probably already answered them over there. So I'm just gonna blow through this quick. But like, what does Werewolf do? How does it fit into supercomputing and what we do? How does it solve those problems? And then how you install it, how it runs. Yeah, obviously I was playing around with my AI generators. Werewolf takes over the environment, does a bunch of things, right? And it manages the entire environment. And then how do we control it, right? We interact with it with its own language, interact with it with YAML configurations. We can go directly configure things if we want. We can import and customize images if we want to. We can edit images directly, but that's not really repeatable. Most of the time we do that with Ansible or something like that. I actually have some labs that show you how to do that. Building customized overlays. You also do overlays and that kind of stuff as well. And then like how do we bake and how do we cook things? What's the difference between them? And that's not just pedantry. There is a real difference there. And then how does Werewolf boot the nodes? And then I kind of show how systems boot up, right? If you're using it, how does it boot? I use a 2-stage kit in my home lab because that's the way that I first got to work with it. So that's just the way that I use it. Anyways, we're not talking about that right now, but that's what's in that other talk if you need that. So I mostly use Slurm, Hans, although I professionally run PBS Pro for a project as well. So mostly Slurm, but I'd say like 90% of the stuff I do is Slurm, and then PBS Pro is like my day job, if you will. In fact, I was just doing PBS commands a little while ago on one of these systems and looking at jobs that had failed. So, and I have Slurm setup labs too for people. Hold on. Let me move this a little bit so I can see what you're saying there. Bunch of Ansible. Yeah, and I use Ansible in mine. Most of these are like my cherooted environments. So if you guys have never set up like an Ansible cheroot, and then like my low Rocky 9 hardening, which really, I didn't really do any hardening with it. I just set it up for when we do our hardening in our lab. But really all it is it just puts the lab packages that I want in there. And then it goes and it sets up the node exporter section. And it pushes over, oh yeah, if we update the kernel, if we do an update, so I was showing if you're going to do an update, and the update for kernel is yes, right? If we set it to yes, then we'll update the kernel as opposed to doing some other type of update. And then we have to rebuild Dracket or the image won't build. So we've done that and tested that out and that kind of stuff. So, all right. Well, let's keep going. So, putting together resume. Again, I'm not talking on this subject right now. This will be on September 5th, and I'll also do a separate recording for people on YouTube as well. Do you have any good suggestion or resources for learning Ansible in an Azure environment with Win plus Linux PMs? Sofa King, no, I don't. Not for Windows, right? So I have a lot of stuff on Ansible in general. And for me, as long as I can hit the box on port 22, Ansible's good. And then for Windows side, I have to be able to hit 5985 and 5986, which is the WinRM port, right? 5985 and 5986 are the WinRM port, and then with certificates. And then typically on Windows side of things, I would just kick off PowerShell scripts inside of it. So I would like let Ansible just start my PowerShell scripts if I needed to. Yeah, Cairo, thanks for coming. But yeah, for your question, Sofa King, yeah, that's a great name, by the way. Yeah, I don't necessarily use Ansible in an Azure environment, but the answer for me is if I can hit it on port 22, then I can configure it any way I want. But then that goes back to that question that I was asking earlier about baking versus cooking. Do we pre-bake things in as the system comes up? Do we do like user data, or do we already have it baked into the image? Those are kind of like our ways of looking at things. Like, do I have images that already have everything I need in them, or do I spend a lot of time loading it up like on first boot, that kind of stuff. But that there's a trade-off there, right? If the longer you make a system take to come up, the less quickly it's ready. So if we're like doing scale out operations, we're doing horizontal scaling in the cloud, and our web servers, let's say our web server takes, over 5 minutes to come up. That's an insane amount of time for a web server. That thing just needs to pop up. But let's say you're doing all this stuff and you're doing all these security compliance checks and you're downloading stuff off of Git and you're populating this VM and it's taking all this time to get ready before it comes up to a state. That's not good. I'd rather, and if those standards don't change very often, or even if they do, you can just use a golden image that gets updated every few months or whatever. You can actually break, and there's a, when I did my Solutions Architect Pro, this over on the AWS side, there were a lot of questions about that, where it's like, what are the considerations for like health checks on the back end load balancer? Because what if the load balancer is looking at a new system, it's trying to spin up new systems, but those systems take longer than the timeout for the health check? Well, then it's just going to kill the system and bring it back up. And you're going to be sitting there with your 5 nodes, 2 taxed, trying to spin up new nodes, and they're just going to keep dying because they never pass their health check. So that's actually a problem that you can cause for systems. But anyways, I don't have a great, boot loop stuff. Yep. I don't have a great answer for that, but I mean, for, my oversimplification is I kind of think Ansible is Ansible. And maybe that's like, again, my oversimplification on it. But I have some decent resources that are free up on Killer Coda. So if you guys have ever used Killer Coda, it's a free website. Whoops, not mean to do that. Killer Coda is right here. It's free. And if you want my stuff, which I'm the guy, I think I'm the only guy on there teaching Ansible. There may be a few other ones, but here's all the Ansible labs. They're all free. But I think if you're using Ansible already, they may be a little simple, but most people I know that go through them enjoy some of the insights that I give, because that's from years, and I've been using Ansible since 2013, and I've been running it as the tech lead since 2016. So like all my teams use it, everybody does it. There's a lot of like kind of like from reports back from the battlefield kind of in here, like things that I actually use in real environments and stuff. So hopefully that stuff's useful to people. Okay, anyways, we were down here, we were putting together a resume. All of the tasks, so all of those different areas I showed earlier, when you guys come in on the 5th, if anybody shows up for that event, you're going to have at the beginning of each one, there's going to be kind of like a little sit down where you're going to take your AI of your choice. I don't care which one you use, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, whatever, and you're going to ask it some questions and you're going to get some feedback, like a little study buddy before I even start talking. So we're going to have like 10 minutes of you guys doing that, and then 10 minutes of discussion where everybody's going to kind of go through and do anything that they want to work through, right? They talk about it and what do they find interesting, whatever. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to prime the pump that you guys that are interested in doing this, you guys that want to get into this field, I think you can do it. I just think you have to like drive yourself to do it, right? I know people, I've actually had quite a few people over the years who they're good at Linux. They can do Linux just fine. But then, 5 years later, they're still working like a retail job or something. I'm like, why aren't you getting into Linux? And they're like, oh, it's too hard to get over into it and this and this. And I'm like, you knew this stuff. I mean, like, granted, I have more years in it, but like you knew this stuff as well as I did, right? Like, I think you guys can do it. Yeah. So if King, hopefully that's useful. Yeah. I think those are good. At least people have told me they think they're pretty good. So getting together a resume, right? What does a resume look like? There's good templates out on Overleaf. Overleaf's a free site. Well, you can run stuff free there, or you can actually, it's an open source project, so you can actually just run it locally, even if you just have a little Kubernetes cluster, or if you just have a Linux box, you can run it on the Linux server. But they have a lot of good template examples out there. This is like my template example, what I think people should lead with. I think you should lead with whatever your strongest thing is. If you have schooling, cool. Lead with it. If you think like I think that the most useful thing for me is like what I've done in the industry, I lead with that. And then my experience. And then at the very bottom you see my degrees and stuff. They're less interesting to me. than like what I've done in the industry and maybe some certifications I have and that kind of stuff, right? Those are the things that I think, like, those are the things that kind of stand out to me when I look at a resume. I also am going to point out that I think a resume should only be one page. However, if you're like in the middle of your career as an engineer, I do think it can expand out to 3 or 4 pages. That's in the specific use case of being an engineer that wants to talk about all the engineering things they've done. And then near the end of your career, I think it goes back down to only one page again. But that's my perspective. That's also probably what a lot of people are going to tell you out there in the industry. And then deliverables, I think you should have a template picked out. You should have a rough draft version of your resume populated, limited to one page. That's what I think would be a good deliverable. And the deliverables won't be like by the end of that day. It's just that you're going to have a plan to do that by the end of everything. Practice interviews, you're going to go do that AI stuff. And then you're going to talk about, like, I'm going to talk about what they want to know in an interview. We're going to talk about the common interview. You know what? Hold on. Let me change this design. I don't want that bright. Let's see. Insert. I think it's a table thing, isn't it? Yeah. Can I format this thing? Format the shape. I just think this thing should be darker. Good. Let's change the text to something not black. How's that? Is that good? I think people will be able to read that. You should have an elevator pitch about yourself. You should have a plan to practice and talk through it. What is this thing asking? No, I disagree. Then applying for jobs, where I think you should look for jobs, where I think you should put in for them. Yeah. I need to populate that section still, obviously. Then what else? Let's go up to the top here. Got all that stuff. Got self-assessments. Feel pretty okay about that. Working in tech. This will probably be the longest section of the day, because it'll be what is going on here. What are the meetings? You're going to get drug into so many meetings in your career that have little to nothing to do with you. Do all the types of meetings. Types of managers. Now, this is not type A, type B personality managers or laissez-faire or any of those other terms that people have given in management for managers. I'm talking about the types of managers that you're going to interact with. So you're going to have line managers, right? So that's like a line manager typically. We'll generally call them that. Hands, I will make these available after the 5th. So what this is, if anybody's wondering like what's going on here, on the 5th, so in our Discord, right? Discord's free. We got a bunch of events. They're all free. There's an RHCSA study group that's starting like the 22nd. So in 2 days, that's going to be the first RHCSA study group. This just changed from this just was a bash study group, but now Colchis and some of the guys are going to they're going to dig in and they're going to start doing their RHCSA. So that's awesome. Get more people certified. That'll be cool. There's a Linux from Scratch team that meets, and there are guys that are going through Linux from Scratch, which I was actually just looking at that documentation yesterday. I had never really dug into like what LFS was, but it's Linux from Scratch, and you run it in a cherooted environment inside of a Linux box that you already have. So I might do some of that on stream because I think it's really cool. Like, first off, I'm already a big fan of images and then like tools like Werewolf and Pixie booting and that kind of stuff. But they show you how to build that stuff from scratch. which Linux from scratch. And I think that you get a lot of understanding of like what's going on with the kernels and the drivers and modules and all those different types of things that you need to run a Linux operating system from that. And the guys have been doing that. Now they've taken the last few weeks off, but I know they're going to get back to it. What I'm actually building is for a talk that's coming up called Breaking into Tech, and it's going to be a 4-hour workshop. It's free, never charge anything for Discord. You guys can always just come hang out. I think there's about 5,200 of us now, so it's a pretty good sized Discord. But it's going to be a self-assessment, learning Linux, or again, some people don't want to do Linux every day, so maybe you want to break into tech with security. So I'll talk about that a little bit, but you know, we are a Linux engineering group, so that's kind of what we focus on, right? Well, we're called the Linux users group, but most of us are using it for admin or engineering work. Then what admins and engineers do day to day, right? Then putting together a resume, practicing your interview skills. I may have a few of our senior guys that have done a lot of interviews. I may have them spin off with people that are interested, go into the different channels and walk through that stuff. So all that to say, yes, the slides will be available, but after the presentation. So, and then also I will take this, I'm not doing this presentation right now, obviously, or I wouldn't be jumping around as much. But these 6 steps, I will also turn these into, I'm going to record these separately and I'm going to put them on YouTube. So then if anybody wants to go through it later, when they get to a section like this, where's that? They get to a section like this, not there. This is a long section. When they get to a section like this and they want to pause it, right? Like let's say you paused me right now and said, okay, this is the AI activity Scott's going to make us do before that section. And it's going to be go ask your AI, whatever one you want. I give a whole list of them at the beginning. What resume length is recommended? What should I lead with on my resume? What are some good, and just see what kind of information you get back. Now, that's not going to be, this is like all things that we do in academia. We then go and sit in a table, and we have some kind of directed, maybe with me or some other person talking through what did you guys learn? What did you take away? What sounded good? What didn't sound good? Because you should be able to evaluate information that's given to you. I tell people all the time, you shouldn't just listen to me because I'm some expert on something, maybe. You should also challenge and look at what I'm saying. By the way, here's the list of them, in case anybody's wondering. This methodology, this is the same type of thing that we're doing in college nowadays, because it's the same kind of way. Back in the day, everybody would go to, hold on a second, my server just logged me out. All right, good, back in. I'm the on-call, so I can't let those set of servers over. I got a whole nother workstation over there that I do all my stuff on. My stuff that isn't this anyways. But anyways, this is a methodology that we're using with college students, because this is very similar to what your industry work's going to look like now. You're going to have something open. You're not going to go to Stack Overflow. Like Stack Overflow all dropped off when ChatGPT came around, and you just pick one of those and start working with it, right? I think all of those have a free version, but for sure Gemini does, because I use Gemini for all kinds of crap and they don't charge me nothing. So but I think all those ones have different free usage models and stuff, which should at least be able to get you through the day for the little project we're doing. Yeah, so anyways, so all that to say, yes, I will have these slides available, but it'll be after I present them. Typically when slides come up, they go to right here. There's a resources section in our Discord, and it's typically presentations. So all old presentations that I or other people have given in our group show up right here. So if you're ever like, hey, where's Scott's one presentation? Uh-oh. Hold on a second, guys. That's one of the most annoying things is when you're on call and you can't turn your phone off, so you got to listen to it. And then a phone number comes in that's not just spam. It doesn't just show up as spam. Then you have to at least answer it. And then they immediately drop you. It's super annoying when they just immediately drop you into like a recording that's already going, and it's like the absolute disrespect. And the worst, oh man, the worst one is the ones where they nowadays they think they're important enough to leave a message. I fucking hate that, because they just want to fill up your voicemail. I don't know why. It's just bots talking to well, anyways. Yeah, so you could pause it then when we do that, and then you'd be able to, or you could pause it now if you wanted and go do that activity, right? Like if you wanted to, before we get into like what a self-assessment is and what that looks like. And I've had people recently, people were complaining in the Discord about, well, I don't want to do a self-assessment. Well, I mean, then what can I do to help you then, right? Like if you don't even want to look at what you want to do, then how can I help you figure out what you want to do, right? Um, yeah, I'm on call, absolutely. Um, Learning Linux. I have a whole bunch of stuff in here. What do I have in here? Final deliverable. Okay, I have to add a lot to that for sure. Probably around certification paths. You know, if people want to just learn things and get better at IT in general, there's a lot of stuff that I think can help you out there to learn those things and work through that. I have a bunch of them in one of these other talks, excuse me. Actually, it's this one. So, what type of certification and training is out there? Some of you guys know I just had to take one. Oh, it's not even on here. I just had to take one the other day for Linux Essentials. This is actually really funny. So in college, if you teach in college or work, some of you have been through some kind of academia and know that it's just so ridiculous. Oh yeah, so technically, I'm just gonna call you Lethal because I can't keep saying Sofa King, even though this is okay. Well, it's gonna say, you know what? If that thing's gonna correct it and make it look all good, then I'm just gonna say, so Sofa King Lethal. I was actually backup on call last week, and I didn't even realize it until a couple days ago. Yesterday, I took the primary on call though, so we do a backup on call and then we do primary, and that's kind of funny. G Tribe said, "What advice would I give someone who's struggling with confidence? Just nailed a job after continuous effort for 4 years, but in the role, almost always nervous about being asked questions or asked to do anything, which forces me to be mute." Yeah, so I can tell you for sure, I don't like talking to meetings. You might actually think, oh, Scott likes talking to meetings because he knows what he's talking about. No, I don't even want to be in meetings. I actually discussed it in one of those things where the meetings are a thing that slow us individual contributors down. But to that point, there's a few ways to get better at what's really there. The confidence thing. One, there's I would say for me, because I'm not a natural public speaker either. I was trained to be a public speaker when I was in high school. I took a marketing class that my best friend's dad actually ran, and in that class we had Toastmasters. Anybody here ever done Toastmasters, or have you guys heard of Toastmasters? They are people who will help you to speak more confidently about things. In that, they will teach you to prepare. And what I learned there, maybe the most useful thing I learned of all of those things there, was that if I'm prepared to talk about something, I'm not nervous at all. I don't care who I'm talking to. I could be talking in front of a group of dignitaries. However, if I'm not prepared, or if I'm around a bunch of other experts, that can cause me some type of pause to whether or not I'm qualified to be there, or that kind of stuff. And that's true of me, who's been teaching for 18 years. I'm almost done with my dissertation for my PhD. I'm like, I should be pretty confident in what I'm talking about most of the time, but I'm not always either. So I would tell you the main thing is just to if you need to, if you just struggle talking in front of people or talking in general, get into something like Toastmasters that will force you to prepare and practice in a semi-safe environment. And the reason I say semi-safe is because they are not completely safe. They will have, if you ever give a talk at Toastmasters, if you say and which are what we call vocalized pauses, I will, if you do that stuff, they will ring a bell and it will train it out of you. I naturally speak like that, and they will train that out of you. Toastmasters is one of the best organizations around for specifically that, but also to learn how to give a toast. Most people don't know how parliamentary procedures and how to run a meeting works. They teach you that. How when you control the podium, you're in charge of the meeting and you're in charge of the event and all that kind of stuff. So very useful. The other thing I would tell you is if you lack confidence, right? Like you worked really hard to get into a role, but now you're nervous about things. Oftentimes people are nervous, or at least this is my experience from being somebody who's taught for a long time, because you don't feel comfortable breaking what you're talking about down into individual pieces. What I mean by that is you're very good. You're very good a lot of times here. Like I'm gonna make this a little bigger for you. Like you know how to do the things you know how to do, right? Like if I told you to boot a Linux box and you're a Linux guy, you're gonna be like, okay, I know how to boot a Linux box. But if somebody were to ask you, hey, I noticed that there were some weird log messages and the server only booted like halfway and then it got stuck. What's that exact log message mean? You're like, oh, fuck, I don't know what that means, right? And you're like panicking. So what I'm saying there is like, you're unconsciously competent about certain things. You've worked yourself into a role, but you don't feel comfortable like breaking down each individual piece, right? And what I would say then is like you need to learn about one, study your subject well, but also as you're like thinking through things, you ask yourself questions about it, and then you start to turn it into stories almost, right? This is all the great teachers in history. You can go look at people who have imparted their wisdom to the world in the most effective ways, and there's all kinds of teachers that we could reference. They always turned things into stories that were relatable. So, if I'm talking about how a server boots, I may say, I may talk about it in, the next steps that happen or something. And then I look and I see where it broke, or, this message that somebody showed me. And I say, I've never seen that before, but I see that we've gotten at least to grub. So I know that the hardware is good on the system, the power on self-test. I'm walking through the steps and I can kind of explain. And then even if I don't really know what the person's asking me, I can still walk through all the things that I do know. And then I get to that and I go, yeah, that is kind of a weird thing. I'm probably going to have to dig into that because I've never seen that error message before. And most people are like, hey, this guy doesn't know and I don't know either, but he understood the process to get to wherever it was at, and then you can kind of go there. So, anyways, tribes, that would be maybe something. Also, if you want, can I also say, I'm going to grab that, right? And I'm not going to put your name on it though, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go drop that in. We have a really good section I think on our Discord here for this, and I'm going to say, question from stream, right? And then I'm going to say, maybe I'll turn that into like a little thread. We don't use threads nearly as often in here as I do like in Slack. We use threads all the time, but right. And then maybe somebody will answer for you. Maybe somebody other than me. I mean, I have my opinions, right? But maybe, and I kind of expressed them, I guess, as well as I could. But yeah. But one of the things I would say is like definitely. Be comfortable in the things that you know. Think about how you can explain what you're talking about in terms of, that other, like maybe lay persons could understand. Because that also goes back to this other thing I want to say in my presentation. Let me get this out of the way. These different types of managers, I was talking about it, it's down here, and different types of managers people are going to run into. Some managers, no matter what you explain to them, are never going to be technical. So like you've got your line manager. He's the manager you typically report to. There's going to be project managers. There's often going to be agile scrum managers, right? And they may be on individual projects. And sometimes project managers are agile. Sometimes they're not. And there's all this other stuff going on. Right? So there's just stuff that can happen there. What else? Line managers, project managers, agile scrum managers. Let's say, I don't want to call them skip levels here. There are managers who are skip levels up above you, but I might say that there's, for every department, there tends to be a director. And the types of information that they're going to want from you are going to be different, right? Your line manager or your reporting manager is going to, oops. This is the person that does your annual review, right? This is the person that does your, that you report to day, right? So your line manager is often the person who, you have the most direct contact with. They're probably going to be in some way tied to the technology as well. Like if you're on the Linux team, like I almost always am, then they're going to be, probably reporting on operations and that kind of stuff. So the questions that they're going to ask you are going to be in the form of like, hey, what's going on with the systems? Or I need this information for the operations report. How many servers were patched this last weekend for our server patching? And even though you've probably enabled them, hopefully, to go pull that information from charts and stuff so they don't have to bug you all the time, sometimes that's still the type of questions they give you, right? So but your line manager probably knows some Linux if you're a Linux team. Maybe not, but sometimes a little. But a project manager, their eyes will literally always glaze over, right? They will never. They don't care to, right? I'm not actually going to leave that in there, but they will never know the technology, right? They want to know if deliverables have been met or if timelines are still on track or have slipped. These are the things they're going to ask you, right? Like this is the stuff that's important there. Slack UI creates this as soon as you reply. Discord differentiates. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and Slack, if you talk in threads, unless you're like directly tagged in that thread, it doesn't keep pinging people who have their alerts on. Some people, and I know my team does this at work, the guys will leave their Slack on their app can ping them every time an active channel comes up. So those guys get really like overly pissed if you're just talking down a Slack channel because they're using Slack to alert them when activity's happening, even on the weekends, right? They're kind of like guys who are kind of always on. I'm one of these guys too. I'm always on, so my system's always pinging. But if you talk down in a thread, right? You start responding in a thread, it's almost like you went to a little side channel. And then then if somebody yells like, hey, at everyone, or hey, at Scott, then it'll pull me into that chat, and then I start getting all of them. But not unless I need to. So it's kind of a nice way. I actually like that about Slack. I don't know if other tools do that as well, but maybe Matrix versus Silo org chart would be relevant. Yeah, that's actually true too, Hans, because I'm mentioning up here where the work comes from, and I'm going to have a list here of, if you're an admin, your work tends to come from either things you're monitoring, so, your monitors, or trouble tickets, users, right? Users, you either find work or users give you work. Those are kind of the two things that happen for admins. But engineers, yeah, different projects we're assigned to may ask you questions. A thing that I've often, in fact, it's so much that I actually put it in here. I have been on so many Tiger teams in my engineering career, like probably literally hundreds of them, where people are working through something or some things going, and then there's a blockage. There's something that stops. There's some, somebody put a screen on a government system and screen's not allowed to be there, and we need to be over here on TMUX or something, and it like grinds a project to a halt until that one thing happens. That tends to be what Tiger teams do, and it's like there's just stuff going everywhere. So we pull out our I forget what the name of a fishbone diagram is. I have it in one of my other talks, but it's is it Ishikawa? Does that sound right? Somebody help me out here. What's the, I know somebody can throw that in Google real quick, but a fishbone diagram is a Ishikawa diagram, I think. And it's like what is driving this failure in the system, and what do we need to focus on? We also use what are called SIPOC reports, which is suppliers, input, process, output, and then customers, right? SIPOC lanes or swim lanes sometimes. There's a different term for swim lanes, I guess, but SIPOC diagrams are, I think it's Ishikawa's are the fishbone diagrams. But how do we drive down to a root cause of something? And then most importantly, how do we go fix that, right? We also have a program manager, which, programs, feeds up. It's actually funny to Brett. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I studied many years ago, so I got an MBA back in 2008, and then I got my MISM in 2011. Ishikawa's fishbone, good. Yeah, that's what I thought. I just couldn't remember right off. I am a trained PMP. I could have went and taken my PMP, but I just didn't want to be a project manager. So like I understand projects well, I think, but mainly because they've been trying to make me a manager in the workforce for like, and I'm not saying this to be a arrogant or a Chad. They've been trying for probably about 20 years to make me a manager. But I'm just like, nope, nope, nope. I'm better as an engineer. Because I don't know if you guys know this about me. Some of you guys know this from being in the Discord. If I was in charge of anything, I would just immediately fire everybody. So you can't put me in charge of anything. I will just flip out and lose my shit. So, yeah, it won't say bad words down there. Anyway, so that's kind of my thoughts. And I'm going to just walk people through the different types of teams. But also, yeah, this is what I was saying earlier about types of meetings. Your role as an individual contributor, right? Like if you're fixing stuff, you don't want to be in teams. Like if I have projects there are like artifacts and deliverables that I have to get done so that some other part of the project can move forward. And I have to keep, every morning I got to talk in a stand-up meeting, and this project manager, this agile manager is always going to ask me about this thing. I do not want to have 6 hours worth of meetings in a day. So this is why a lot of times with engineers, I actually need to put this in here, but you need to like zealously guard your time. Now, real quick, I don't like coach or teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I've been doing it for 23 years. 23 years now. And I'm pretty okay at it. So like when I train with the white belts at my gym in the morning, I'm not their coach, but I will tell them stuff like, hey, when you let your elbows flare out away from your body, you're giving me all these attacks. So I'm like, you have to zealously pull your arms into you so that you're not getting attacked in these ways. Or people will sometimes ask me like, hey, you've done that thing to me 30 fucking times today. How are you doing that to me? And then I'll show them, and I'm like, but here's the thing. People show stuff, and then it's like, but that's not the crux of the problem. The problem is that you messed up like 3 weeks ago. and that's your problem, is that you're letting your arms float out too far, right? Well, where I'm going with that is it's the same thing here. You get pulled into meetings because you let people pull you into meetings. You have to block off your time. And some companies are better at that than others, right? Like some companies will like make it a point like, hey, our engineers always have Thursday mornings to work on stuff that they need or work on, organizing their thoughts or whatever. And we don't do stand-up meetings on Thursday morning or something. There's companies that'll do that because they realize like if you're always pulling your individual contributors into a team or into meetings, like your manager and your project manager are perfectly happy to have you sitting in those meetings all day with them, but they will still expect that work to be done the next day. And that's not acceptable for a whole bunch of us, right? And that's, that's one of those things that like takes a level of maturity to push back on that. Like, I'm not going to be in meetings all day, guys. But the other way we do it is like we do, we block off our time. We block off our lunchtime, right? If you're like me, like I loved back in the day when we'd go in the office, I'd love to go to lunch. I'd go to lunch with people on other teams. I'd go to lunch with people on my team. But what I didn't like to do, and some of you guys will probably realize this as well. Oh shit! One of my buddies got called out again. I'm the on-call, but somebody else got called. Good. All right. Yeah. All right. Anyway, sorry. They would be perfectly happy to put you in meetings all day, and then just one day you wake up and you're a manager. And I've seen that actually happen to really good engineers, and then they just freaking hate their life. And it's like, it's a temptation because it's like a lot of times that manager makes a little bit more than the position you're at. Doesn't probably make more than like a principal engineer. Let's just put that out there. But when they get up higher, managers definitely do. Managers have a huge curve of where their pay goes eventually, but not at that some of the low level stuff where people find out that they were better as an engineer than a manager. Make it a point that I don't join a work meeting without an agenda. If notes items aren't taken, then the meeting may as well. I completely agree with that, to Brad. One of the things about meetings, if you're going to have meetings, and that's an excellent point. You have to have an agenda, and you have to stick to it, which also is something that Toastmasters will teach you. So, one more of those things about Toastmasters, they're fantastic for that. But two, there has to be, like, you can't just say in a meeting, well, you can do this if you want, but I'm just telling you it's not going to be effective. You can say in a meeting, well, somebody should take care of that. You might as well have just like went like this and just not done anything, because nothing's going to happen. If you say somebody, everybody's just going to back against the wall and act like they didn't hear you, especially you, right? So, and this is one of the things, this is one of the reasons, like, I don't mind being the tech lead, but I don't really like I don't want to be the manager. I'll be the lead. But, like, sometimes you just have to point at somebody and say, hey, you're going to take that. You have to assign it to somebody. You have to give it to somebody. You have to have, like, at the end, you give, like, a little roll-up. Hey, here's all the things we just did, and these are the things that people are working on, and those will be reported on in the next whatever. You know, you should have timelines around stuff, but not always right away. There's not always timelines up front. But again, this is only going to be a 4-hour thing that we're going to do, so I can't we can't talk through everything, right? But I do think engineers need to think through some of this stuff. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. How's that? Yes, that's a technical term. It's a hot mess, by the way. Those are the same outputs, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. And I tell people often when we look at this, like, I've been a Linux guy for almost 25 years now, and I have no idea what that says. I have no idea. I mean, I understand, like, what the command is, and I understand that, but I can't even. I wouldn't. If somebody sent me that, I'd be like, yeah, F you too, buddy, because that's what you're telling them. This is, and I've often said this screen should just have, like, this come up, because this is readable by everybody. Even if you don't know any command line, never done anything, you're like, oh, well, at least whatever usage is right here. But here it's like, what the hell is happening, right? Like, I don't know, not to beat that too much, but that's you know, my thoughts on stuff that I show my engineers too. Let's clean this up a little bit. Yeah, everything in this one is accurate. This is a screenshot from a assignment years ago. Just one of the worst things I've ever seen. And he's right. It's perfectly correct mathematically from a networking standpoint. Perfectly good work. Just terrible though. Just terrible. And if any of you guys are networking engineers, you're like, yeah, that's right. But man, why didn't he just flip me off and tell me he wasn't going to answer me? You know, at this point. Documentation, yeah, policies. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where you go to get, where you go to write policies and where you go to write procedures, because I think these are important. Then you got to practice your plans, right? A plan that's just written and then thrown in a thing to be reviewed once every 12 months or whatever. That's no good. You gotta actually work through these things. You gotta practice some of this stuff. All right. With padding, yeah. I'm actually okay with that. Yeah. This one is a particular. I end up teaching this class at the college about twice a year, and something like this comes across my desk every now and then. I'm just like, oh, you're right, but at what cost, right? You're right, but at what cost? All right. We'll just go through some of these because these are just some of the types of documentation. This one will be fun. Testing, right? And we won't go super deep into testing, but I will show the types of testing that are common in engineering, right? Fucking security. Yeah, I have an Adobe Creative Cloud, so I have this little penguin that I use, and then I generated him a while back, and then I just use him in different contexts, like you can use in Firefly when you generate stuff. That's funny. That's funny to me. Yeah. And then I need to give terms. I have a whole bunch of terms, but some common ones. Let's just go with them. Yak shaving. You guys heard of yak shaving? How about what's another good one? Let's put this like this, because if we need to add some more, we'll just put this over. Yak shaving, bike shedding, swags. Oh, I got a whole list of them somewhere. Hold on. Let me see if I have these. It's not in that talk. Swags are scientific wild ass guesses. How about this one? Who knows what pebcac and picnic are? They're two of the same. There's also another one people like, which is the ID10T, but I don't think ID10T is nearly as clever as people think it is. It's like, oh, it's an ID10T error, and then somebody looks at it and goes, oh, you're calling me an idiot, thanks, buddy. But it's like, well, I don't think that's very clever. But pebcac and picnic are pretty clever, right? And if you put that in a meeting, or if you put that in a thing, most people wouldn't know. Problem lies between chair and computer. Yeah, so pebcac is problem exists between chair and keyboard, and picnic is problem in chair, not in computer. Oh, yeah, I like that one. I forgot about that one. OSI 8 problem. Yeah. Layer 8. That's pretty good. I like that. Yak shaving is the idea that you go, and actually, you know what? There's a really good, there was a show long ago called Malcolm in the Middle. I think they did a remake of it too, or they're running another series of it. But the dad is the same guy who played Walter White. I almost said Bruce Campbell, but it's not Bruce Campbell. It's somebody help me out here. Who played Walter White? I can't think of him right now. But he goes to do something, right? Like there's like a something squeaking or something, and he goes to get his oil, and he goes to get like the oil can or something, I forget. And then as he goes to get that, he notices like the door isn't on the hinge right. So he's like, so he goes to the hardware store and he's like starts picking up all this. And the point is, by the end of the day, he still hasn't done the original first thing, but he's had to do like 30 other things to get back to doing that thing. That's what yak shaving is, right? So Bryan Cranston, that's right. Yeah. I knew that, just it was somewhere lost in the back of my head. So yak shaving is the idea that, yeah, you don't get to the thing because as you start unpacking things, it just keeps, you keep going to fix the next thing because once you unpackage it, you find all these other errors and stuff. And that's a big one. Bike shedding is a different problem. Bike shedding is you're doing $1 million project, or you're doing a $10 million project. The original way this is presented, bike shedding, is the idea that you were working on a nuclear reactor. You're building a big nuclear power plant, and it's tens of millions of dollars, right? Maybe even hundreds of millions. But everybody wants to argue about the color of the bike shed out in front of the place, and it's bike shedding is blocking by discussing things that don't matter. And the best way to stop a lot of this is to identify it and look it in the face. You know, engineers, so this happens, I think that this happens for a couple of reasons. One, it happens because some engineers are really lazy, and trust me, I understand that. But two, sometimes they're not confident about things, and they will bike shed instead. So somebody will say, hey, we need to really update our certificates on the, whatever servers. And somebody will be responsible for that, but won't know how to do it. So then they'll just start bike shedding and talking about, well, can we really do that? Last time I started to do that, I got this and this and this. And then, and the conversation will take these spins, and you guys will see this in teams. This is why it's so important to have an agenda of because people will bike shed so that by the end of that meeting, nothing is required. And then they have until the next meeting to just do whatever else they want. Bike shedding is very similar to like beating a dead horse. I've actually seen it happen one time. This was at Lockheed Martin when we used to be in the SCIF facility. Right, SCIFs are the secure compartmentalized facilities, and what I watched was these two people who they always had to have the last word, and they got in an argument. and we're in a meeting with like 40 people, and they got in this argument, discussion, let's say. They didn't agree on something. And then they got to agreement. And then they loudly agreed with each other for 45 fucking minutes. And I sat there like, oh my God, will you two shut the fuck up? But I wasn't like high enough in my career really to do that at that time. Nowadays, I would just leave the meeting. I'd just be like, see ya, and I'd just leave. Because everybody knows, like, if I'm doing something like that, then somebody's doing something wrong. But yeah, they were bike shedding their agreement for each other on this thing that, again, like they were beating the dead horse. No one knows how to estimate the budget. Yeah. So they can contribute on that stuff. Yeah. And people will be like, oh yeah, I did that one time. And it's like, man, that is not relevant unless you're volunteering for this right now. Right. What other terms? I mean, I have a whole bunch of them somewhere. In fact, I think we brainstormed them years ago in the Discord too. Just all the terms that we can think of. Let me see if I got any good ones over here. I'm looking through this other one that I sometimes give. I don't have this one's not like a hot, like a keyword type one. I definitely looked this up years ago, or we all put together, and I have a list of them somewhere. But I'll keep adding these, just like terms that are good to know in information technology, like things that you probably should general term. Oh, like ways engineers say things too. There's just a lot of like kind of ways that engineers like will generate. Let's say like cocktail. That right? Like cocktail math. That's similar to a swag, but it's like I can like estimate it. Swags are scientific wild ass guesses. One of my favorite terms. So cocktail math, like I can, try to bust it out real quick here in this meeting, but I'm just going to be doing it in my notebook, and it's not going to be as good as if I were to like sit down and actually reason it out, that kind of stuff. Oh man, it's funny when you go to think about them and then your mind draws a blank. But I'll think about more of them, and I'll just keep adding them as I go. I probably have them in my notepad somewhere here too. I probably have a whole bunch of them. Yeah. Yeah. But I'll think of more of those for sure. What else? What else we got in here? Final deliverables. This one's going to be weird because the final deliverables around the business stuff. There's not. I don't know that there's really much except you should kind of keep studying, right? You should kind of keep studying the ways that these things work, because this one starts out around working in tech and really why the jobs exist, like where we get on typically if we're starting out as like an admin before we get over into some of the more engineering type roles. What is the job? This also comes from, so this methodology right here that I have comes from what we call the PPDIOO. So some of you guys have been around when I talk about that, but it's a methodology that Cisco actually created called prepare, plan. So it's prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, and optimize. So what are we doing? Yeah. Yeah, I used to say, yeah, it's funny. I said that the other day, and I said backup operator, and I forgot that it's not the backup operator from hell. He's the one who didn't know his father, operator from hell. Because if you guys don't know, that's what the technical term is. If you don't know who your dad is, you're a bastard, right? Yeah, BOFH was a good one. Maybe I need to go look through some old XKCDs too, or Dilbert. There's some good ones around that. But then kind of generally why companies have IT departments, right? Maybe you're the product, or maybe you're a cost center. And I've worked in both of these roles. Currently, I'm the product, right? I'm the person who goes and does engineering, and then my company gets paid money from the government for that. And when you're like that, it's honestly, if you ask me which of these is better, to be the product or to be a cost center, like because I ran, some of you guys know, I ran all the platform engineering for AAA, which is a big insurance company. And but even that, even the guy who's like keeping all of the Linux and Windows systems, 5,000 plus servers running, I was a cost center. Like, I cost the company money. So the people that were making the company money were all the 200 dev teams that were building applications and going and doing data analytics against customer data and all this kind of stuff. Those were the guys that were making us money. So guess who, for lack of a better term, got treated like a stepchild when it came time for something nice to happen, or when it came time for, like, you know, the one child runs up and complains, and then you run up as the stepchild and say, it wasn't me. Well, if you guys don't know how that story goes, I mean, go look up Cinderella, right? She wasn't treated very well, right? It's the same kind of idea. But you're a cost center in some cases. You will never make the company money. Nothing I did at AAA ever made them money. Now, did I keep a lot of stuff running? That was why they paid me, right? But full well knowing that, like, I'm supporting their business processes. So where do I, yeah, actually, this is an insurance company, needs IT to conduct billing, keep track of customers, and target marketing, but I'm still costing them money in the big scheme of things, right? If they could do me, if they could do my stuff cheaper, let's say it that way, if they could do my stuff cheaper by outsourcing it, they would, because keeping a bunch of Linux servers up isn't really in their wheelhouse. They don't want that in-house. They just need it for security reasons, right? So another part to this, after we get through, where the work comes from, maybe here at the end, after all that stuff, documentation, after that, after testing, we'll probably add, after that even, I might add in this other thing that I want to add. Hold on. I know I'm jumping around a lot, but no, not this one. I'll move this one back in case I want to reference some stuff out of there later. Actually, I do want to pull some stuff out of there later for the learning stuff. No, I want to find, where's my other doc here? And this is we're going to have a little bit about risk management. In that, risk is a thing that people have to, we have to deal with it, right? The risk of a process not running, the risk of some unfavorable action. So I'm going to give some terminology like this. This is some terminology from one of my other talks. And so yeah, we'll do it like this. That's fine. And I need to probably make them about the same size. So is that 20, 24, 20. And then this is going to be a security topic. And what's that size? 48? What's that size? 48. There we go. Okay. Risk management. So at the end of the day, a lot of security stuff is dealing with risk management, and there are teams that deal specifically with that. But I'm going to talk with them about the things they can do with risk. A little bit. What can we do with risk? We can accept it. We do some mitigations on it. Share. Got a typo on my slide. Hate that. Save that. Okay. Risk reduction. That's pretty good. Might make those a little bigger too. All right. What else can we do with risk? So then we've got a assessment methodology for risk that exists out there, right? So there's a pretty well structured way that we can deal with risk. I'm pulling this from one of my other talks. That's good. This is a way to do it. NIST is National Institute of Standards and Technologies. Most of you guys probably figured that out, or technology, I guess. And I just want to show a little bit around what is risk management. This actually comes, it's funny, I'm pulling this out of one doc, but it's from like 3 other talks ago that I have. These things just keep moving between my talks. Same slides, same decks. So what is IT risk management, right? And some of you guys have seen this if you've been in the if you've been around when we're talking about incident management. This comes from my incident management talk. Excuse me. And the risk management process kind of looks like this. Right? So that's IT risk management. And I guess I'll bring one more talk in that I do. Or one more other piece. Which is this. Which is the types. Oh yeah, I don't like that. Can I change? Oh, you know what I found too? This is actually kind of funny. I found out that I can dictate directly into this. So I can actually, kind of like at the bottom of my screen there, my little talk to text or whatever. I just don't like the format of these. It looks better on my other slide. I could play with the format of this later though. But generally speaking, this is wait, can I go find, hold on. So I did this earlier with one of these, not that one. I'll probably make them all the same type. Format painter. Don't fail me now. That's the worst. All right, let's just see if we can change this around. Background, black. Text, white. That's better. And then can I just apply that same? Screw it. Background black. Text white. Oops. Text white. Oh, that's good enough. And to not be just as bad as my other student the other day. Let's go fix that probability. That's funny. Yeah, there we go. And I won't go deep, guys. There's all kinds of like ALEs and AROs and all kinds of other things that we could talk about with risk. But this isn't a deep dive into any of that stuff. I just wanted to show that, like, and I'll go quick through it. But with security, like, companies are risk averse, and then they they do activities to try to avoid. Well, and different companies have different risk appetites, right? Um, but it's useful to know this stuff if you're going to get into IT, because this is going to determine how quickly, like, if you say, Scott, why would I want to know, like, if I'm a Linux admin, right, and I come in on a company, well, if your company just doesn't give a shit about patching, then new vulnerabilities coming out isn't that big of a deal to your company. But maybe they don't want to be immediately compromised by something like a CVE 10, a CVSS score of 10, then maybe you can kind of wake them up and go, hey, we need to patch this log4j thing now. Like, it's not like wait over the weekend. It's all hands on deck. We need to get this thing fixed because it's going to take everything down. So that's why we kind of talk about that. So I'll mention that a little bit. The slide decks already went from 49 to 73 pages just here in the last little bit. I think even when I started this, it was only at 52 pages. But I don't necessarily need it to be a long set of slides. We've got plenty of things to talk about that day. I think what we really need is this is why I really want to make sure I get the takeaway part done, like, or the final delivery, like what you guys are leaving from this talk with if you come and do it in a couple weekends. The final deliverables are like the most important thing, because you have 4 hours and then you get done and it's like, oh well, shit, what am I going to do, rewatch it and then Scott will say the same things and I'll forget them again? Or is it more important to have some like tangible thing to do, like some kind of SMART goals, right? Those specific, measurable, actionable, something, I don't know, relevant and time bound, something like that, right? SMART goals, you guys have probably all heard of them. I think that's it. Specific, measurable, I forget what A is. I think it's actionable, but then it's relevant and time bound for sure. I should probably go look that up. But the point is, people are going to look that up with their AI, and then we're going to talk about it. So that'll be good. Where do I have that? Right here. Yeah, SMART goals. How to set them. I just want people to walk away from this with something, because I had people in the Discord recently saying, oh, like, there's no way to get into tech, and I'm like, well, I don't agree with that. I have college students getting into tech all the time. I just had somebody tag me on LinkedIn the other day about them getting, well, I guess they're already in tech, but moving up, right? These kind of things are things that I think people can definitely do, but I can't do it for you, right? I can't like make you learn any of this stuff, even if I were to talk about it all day. I don't think I can make anybody learn it. I need to fix some of those. Those are all over the place. Final deliverables. So I want you guys to be able to work on your documentation procedures, and you can get better at those in two really simple ways that I know of. You can go to sans.org, and you can go to information security policies, and there are all kinds of policies that you can use. If you guys have never seen this, I'll link it to you. This is a great place to start if your organization doesn't have any security policies. The other one is also sans.org, but it's the list of cheat sheets. I love this for, you want to write a procedure on how you check out your server. This is a great one for that. Excuse me. You do like a security incident survey, and then this is like a nice high-level doc on how you would get into a Windows or a Linux system to check it. But this isn't the whole thing. You have to then go turn this into a set of steps that your network operation, late night, third shift type person would do against a set of servers or against something as they're gathering information and calling people out and going through whatever their, things are. So, yeah, that'll be that. Then, yeah, what other things would I want people to know out of here? We're doing just, about the job. Let's say um I guess you can read blog posts about operations work. Excuse me. There's also a pretty good book on IT management stuff called the Phoenix Project. I have a copy of it up there in I'm in my office here, but up in my bookshelf in my office here, I have the Phoenix Project. I'm not gonna prescribe anybody to go read the Phoenix Project, but there's some pretty good information about it out there. Maybe I'll find another resource or two that I think are good. Maybe I'll get some blog posts that I think are good, just around what a day in the life of a person. Actually, that could just be BOFH links, right? The bastard operator from hell, because it is dealing with users a lot of the times, right? What else? This section is about the managers, the stuff that you're going to do, where the work's going to come from, kind of what administration is. This will be a good one. Read the free books on I think these are great books. If you guys have never seen these, the SRE books, SRE Google Books are probably one of the best things that's free on the web. I'll link it to you guys if you want it, but it's also, they're just these free books. Yeah, I should be getting the PhD done. The dissertations due, well, you can always push out a dissertation, but I should have it done here by the end of the year or by April of next year. Those are kind of my two goals. If I can finish it this year, that saves me about $6,400 because I'm paying each quarter myself, or I guess it's each semester. What is that? Yeah, I guess they're semesters. But yeah, I should be finishing it up soon, Trevor. In fact, I have a deliverable tomorrow that I should be working on tonight, but I'm not. But I have one more milestone thing, basically, before I kind of pull it all together for all 5 chapters. I do have a lot of work to do on it yet still, but we'll kind of see how we go here. But anyways, these books right here, really great books. I know I pull them up pretty often, where you're just trying to see what it's like to build reliable systems, because at the end of the day, secure and reliable, that's really what that's really what this whole section is here that we're talking about, like what the company wants. Let's see. What do companies expect of IT departments? They want stable, secure, they want stable and secure systems. let's see. So let's do bullet points. We call these uptime expressed as a number of nines. Right, so 4 nines or something like that. It's also, oh, getting a message that Steve's going to the gym. Good. I'm the on-call and he's the backup, so hold on. Heads up. They want uptime expressed as number of nines. They want so stability is typically oh, you know what, I actually have to bring up, I have to put in the production, I have to put the different types of environments as well. Stability is customer facing systems operate within their functional and non-functional requirements. Right, that's stability of a system. What is a functional requirement? We've been over this, but I'll say it for anybody that's not been here. A functional requirement is when, like, if you've got a web server, right, and I say, hey, I want a server that's operating on port 80 and 443, or maybe let's just say 443 TLS, right? It's transport layer security, and it's got 443, so HTTPS, and it can do secure encryption with certificates or whatever, right? So then, is the web server on port 443, right? I connect to it over curl and I see that, yes. Is there a certificate that is properly signed by a certificate authority that other people can go and download that certificate authority, or the web browsers understand and respect? Then that would be, those are like check functional requirements. Cool. Non-functional requirements are, the web server's up with 1,000 users and the 1,001st user connects to that web server. Does that work? That's a non-functional requirement. That's not like a checkbox. It's just a how does it behave in the wild? And you might say, well, that's stress testing and load balancing or load testing. Yes. It's absolutely all those things. But non-functional requirements are things that are more behavior around how well it operates, how fit for warranty is a thing. Said, where do you system get updates and software that has an update or new critical vulnerability? So Alpha Victor Charlie, typically what happens is you're paying. So there's two ways a company can do it. They can do it the free way, and then they're beholden to the industry for whenever the industry puts out, whenever the open source community puts out patches for things. Or what a lot of companies do, again, to that risk aversion and risk management, they pay somebody like Red Hat Enterprise Linux or CIQ for Rocky, or go through any of the people, Canonical for Ubuntu. They pay them, and then now they have official support channels where they get the security and the update patches as quickly as possible. And then typically at that point you have their repositories that are typically like, you've got to have like a product key or some kind of approval to go download that kind of stuff, and then you can add that in. But a lot of times with softwares, if there's a new critical vulnerability, if there's no patch for it yet, right, it's still, it's not quite 0 day because it's been found, but there's no patch for it yet. There's a window there where there's kind of it's like a no man's land. And I tell people all the time, like, if we're not in the business, like as admins and engineers, of building those patches ourselves, then now we end up waiting for our vendor to get them to us. There's no amount of pushing that'll get those faster, but they tend to come out pretty quick. What we do in that case is we have typically like layered defense models where we're protecting our system at multiple places, so that even if something, the same thing with like Log4j, we were getting hit immediately when Log4j happened, but we were never popped for Log4j. Log4j was a 100% vulnerability. If you had that exposed on a web server and your server was running Tomcat and had Java processes running, and Log4j was taking log information out, it was prepared back then, before it all got patched out, to immediately execute anything that somebody put in there. So people were sending in header requests, and then when it got dropped into the logs, they were rewriting DNS entries as root in company. And well, that also brings up a different concept of how you run your processes. But obviously, not all companies are ready for that. We never got popped where I was because we had a web application firewall in front of us that was looking at all those requests, going no, like a layer 7 aware firewall. Log4j was a big deal because if you were here for it, Hans, Log4j popped as like a 10, and then it got patched, and then it got popped as like a 9, and then it got patched, and then got popped as a 10 again, and it was just over and over and over again. Log4j. In fact, I mean, we can go look it up if we want, but it was brutal. Log4j was a lot of 4j. We could also just go to the NIST database and probably find it. But here's one of the vulnerabilities, right? And what was it? What was it published at originally? This was the original one, 12.10. That was the original one that popped. And what did this one pop at? Where's the actual? Oh, look at all these. When it first popped, it was a 10. Where's it at? Yeah, just all over the place. Because you get a CVSS score with it, right? Common vulnerability security scoring, I think. And then all the known vulnerabilities are down there. Where's it at? Oh yeah, see, yeah, right there. There's the 10. Base score was 10. This was critical. Like, you had to patch this out, but we still had to wait. So like, we had tools. We had like, I was working with Qualys at the time. Qualys was our scanner, as opposed to like Tenable Security's Nessus, which is a very common one most people know about. We were using Tenable Security, and I actually, some of you guys know, I fixed one of their scanners. So we had the scanner. There was a script that had to be out there, and then it would do the scanning, and then the device could pull it, could pull the results. But their script assumed that Linux boxes had zip and unzip on it, and failed silently if they didn't. Well, none of my production systems have zip or unzip on them for many reasons, but not the least of which is I don't want people unzipping shit on my prod systems. Why? Just think about it for a second. Why would anybody ever have the permissions to unzip something in one of your prod systems? They shouldn't be doing that. It should be patched and unzipped way further back and then move forward, right? So anyways, there's some things to think about. I don't know if anybody wants this one, but that was the first of them. And then they kept popping. You could go look. They just kept popping. It was a mess. Big old hot, what we call a hot mess, right? Yeah. Then stability and security. The concept of CIA triad, which we all know the CIA triad is confidentiality. Who can see? Integrity. Who can change, and then availability. How often can the service be reached, right? And these are typically a series of questions we ask. Who can see? Who can change? How often can the services be reached, right? In all of these, right? In all of these concepts here, let me go. Here. Let's do it like this. let's say to determine criticality. Is that spelled right? Maybe. They conduct. They develop. So then they develop business continuity plans to keep system to plan for systems rolls up into a disaster recovery DR plan, right? So those are kind of common terms. So a big part of this talk that I'm going to be giving will be around getting people a little more comfortable with the topics, right? The things that are going to be asked of them if they're in this field. That's pretty good, huh? What do you guys think? Yeah. That's good enough, right? Although uptime is part of security because availability and uptime are the same thing, right? But it's just different ways to look at the same thing generally. Also, yeah, maybe let me go back over here. I'm gonna take a quick break. Go stretch my legs. You guys can talk amongst yourselves. Put this down here. Quick break. Do 8 minutes. I'll be back. I'm gonna go drink my water, wander around a little bit. I'll be back. All right. I don't know how much longer I have before the wife gets here. I think she said she'll be here around 7. Let me text her real quick. We're still on break. If you guys have any questions or want to know anything about what we're talking about, let me know. I should also let you guys know that we have a Discord where you guys can hang out with other engineers, people that are doing the same stuff that you're doing. All right. Thank you, anonymous gifter, for the gift sub. That's hilarious. I think the anonymous gifter just likes finding general people to with ridiculous names. All right, we'll let that timer run down. I have a habit of starting things early, and I'm like, well, maybe somebody walked away, and maybe somebody wants to wait until. So I'll wait. I'll wait. I do the same thing with my college students. I don't want to go through. Don't want to start too early in case anybody was waiting for me. Although we're not really working on anything too crazy right now. Oh, you know what? I do need to do this. I'm jumping around a lot. All right, good. It's good for a timer. All right. Anything we talk about interests you, put it in your notes. Yeah, good. I think that's something I really want to make sure people do, because like if you don't write stuff down, guys, I mean, you probably see it with me. I forget stuff almost as fast as I think it. So you got to write stuff down, right? There's anything worth remembering is worth writing down. There's an old saying about that, and I probably pretty much agree with it for the most part. Yeah, I think that's pretty good for the self-assessment we've done a million times. So I mean, I think that one will be about as simple as that part can go. But you know, I want people to know what they want to do. You should know what you want to do. Whether, whoops. Right. You should know your strengths and weaknesses, and they'll help or hinder you getting to what you want to do. And you should know the opportunities and threats out there in the industry. So we'll spend a little time like working on that in the group. That'll be good. Learning Linux or your specific path. Certification paths. Let's say hands-on labs. And probably a big part of that, as I'm kind of working through that with people, will be, you know, like everybody, we even have a whole section in Discord. Everybody thinks they want to do a home lab, right? And home labs are great, right? Like I'm a big fan of home labs. I do a lot with them and stuff like that. But that's not the only way to get hands-on experience in Linux or in any technology, really. There's all kinds of stuff in the cloud you can do for pretty cheap to free. There's you can get a lot of hands-on time without spending any money out there. Killer Code is one of these things. I think some of you guys were around, maybe some of you were around when I got my CKA and my CKAD. And I did almost, I mean, I'd say 95% of what I did was up in Killer Coda for free. I did a little bit with Mumshad's Code Cloud course. So he had a Code Cloud course that you could do. And then, yeah, like all the labs out on Killer Coda. I mean, we do have our own lab environment too. Yeah, Zorgel mentioned Prolog Labs. But yeah, you guys could use those too, right? Obviously in the Discord, you guys can join, and you go down here to, I think it's right here. Yeah, Prolog Lab environment, and this talks you through how to add your key. So you add a public key, and then you can get logged in. It'll go and put it in our authorized users file. So authorized keys file. Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But yeah, certification path, hands-on lab. And I will probably, there's no substitute to hands-on experience. It solidifies the skills you're trying to learn in a way that so it solidifies skills you're trying to learn in a way that can't be ignored, right? There's an old saying, I see, I forget. I hear, I see, I forget, no, I hear, I forget. I see, I remember, I do, I understand. Right? That's this old saying that's been around for a long time. It's also a big one for like teaching and stuff like that. Like if you just talk, right? Like if I'm just sitting here talking, that's not as good. But then as we're doing these things and I'm walking through this with everybody, I'm going to be expecting them to be going into their little chat bot or their AI or whatever and kind of finding things that are interesting to them, right? Because again, this is one of those things I can't make anybody learn anything. I tell people sometimes, like, one of the most impossible things on planet Earth, one of the most impossible things we know is that you can't make somebody learn something they don't want to know. And you say, well, how can you say that, Scott? Well, go look at the history. I mean, even the last just 200 years of records of people being tortured and you know, this and this and this, and you can't make anybody believe or think differently than they want, whether it's right or wrong. You know, I mean, that's not the point of what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to want to learn and change something, right? You can't do that. Give up on homelab because my school wants me to scrapping using Selenium, but he's used Chromium with security problems in it, so I have to patch and build the browser. So I figured do it in Docker without root in the cloud. Yeah, that's probably fine. That's probably the best way to do it. And most of you guys know, if you do anything up in the cloud, even like a virtual desktop interface hardly costs anything. You can run VDIs for the same cost that you would run. VDI is the acronym. So yeah, VDI is the acronym, and then it's just virtual desktop interfaces, right? And you could get away with some pretty cheap stuff out there. So that's what a lot of people do, by the way. If you're going to be getting into you know, you want to go do, I mean, in some ways penetration testing too, but like if you're doing it, hopefully you're doing it legally, you can do stuff out there, and you can get into things, and you can accept viruses, and you can accept packages into your virtual desktop interface because you don't give a shit about the system. It's basically just a blank page that can be wiped and started over as much as you need. Hold on, the wife wants me to call her. Give me, let me text her real quick. All right, I gotta get off here. I gotta call the wife in a second. Let me. Okay, hold on. One of the hardest things to know is the upstream is some security bug. They want to use Chromium, but Firefox doesn't have security vulns, so I'm stuck. Yeah, I have OpenAI day breakthroughs, so my security skills just got nice. Yeah, Freedom DAO. That seems like that's a very specific one. If I would do that, if I were doing something like that, I would probably figure out how I could. Let's see, wait, your school's doing something. Hold on, I need to move this. They want you to use selenium. They won't let you just use, like, you can't just scrape with, like, beautiful soup and Python or something. I just, when I scrape, I use requests in Python because I'm, plus you could probably find a million things, but that's interesting. So they're using like a specific tool for scraping. I haven't, yeah, Freedom DAO. You guys will find I don't do a whole lot with anything that's on like a desktop. I'm almost always command line for everything, so I don't know much. Like browsers are of all my things that I'm weak on, browsers are probably one of my weakest. Like, yeah, I don't know much about them because if I ever need to pull something, I can just do it, over at the command line typically, and then look for what I need. But as far as most of that goes, yeah, I wish I could be more helpful on that. Let me, guys, this is a work in progress, so we'll be doing this the next few days. Also, I will be working. I have to do more. I'm building an HPC course for my company for our engineers to keep going through, and I've been kind of doing that. There's some things I can show on stream, some things I can't, but I have to get back involved with. We were doing what were we doing? It was like our ConnectX-5 cards, and then having OpenIBD, and well, Mellanox OFED, and then that installs OpenIBD for your specific kernel and your hardware. So I have to write that up for the guys. Pretty straightforward, guys. All that probably sounded way more complex than it actually is, but I mean, but you never admit that to a manager, right? Like you admit that with other engineers and stuff, but you don't admit that with a manager. Stuck on a tool I'm not a fan of. Yeah, and that's the thing, Freedom DAO. Like, sometimes school will limit you in ways like that so that they can evaluate and so that they can, I don't know. There's probably some reason. I mean, trust me, I'm stuck in all that academia too, and we do things for sometimes reasons that are outside of, what I would call what you're going to do in the industry. So sometimes, like, I think, yeah, because you mentioned it was for school. It sucks, but like sometimes you just have to go through it, like what I call playing the game. Just get your work done and then go do it the way that you want later, and just know, like, hey, that was a fun experience, but that's not the way I'm going to do it out in the industry, because it's probably not. I don't know. There's not very many places in the industry that are super prescriptive on what you do as a like what your workflow is as an engineer. As long as you can secure it and as long as you are getting your deliverables done, there's not a lot of like, hey, I'm going to put you in this little box over here and you're going to do it this way. There's not a whole lot of that. Although I do know, like, some of the big companies, they have their internal tools they use and stuff. Like our AWS and our Google people, they'll talk about, hey, I've got these internal proprietary tools that I use, this and this. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's just some workflow. But it sounds like you're probably, you know how you're going to do it when you do your own research and you do your own stuff. So, yeah. All right, guys, I'm probably going to, I'll drop for now then, and I will be back around. Probably, I'll definitely be on tomorrow for a little bit before the wife comes home, but I definitely appreciate everybody coming. I'm supposed to start saying, I don't do this much, but I'm supposed to start saying something like, and I'm supposed to do it at the beginning of the stream, something like smash the like button and subscribe and all. I don't know what all that stuff means, but what I do know is if this stuff's useful to you, come hop on the Discord. That's the place that I think is most persistent for you guys, where you can, even if you're not talking with me, there's all kinds of other people that are also going through either the same process or they're working on the same type of stuff. So, yeah, I'll drop off of here, and I will see some of you guys later. Take care.